From Ben Simmons' never-ending feud with the Philadelphia 76ers to Jimmy Butler's white-hot rage for the Minnesota Timberwolves, these are the times NBA players were rude to their former teams. There's no better place to start than Simmons' Instagram story about the 76ers. Now, my favorite part about all this drama is the amount of pettiness involved. I mean, you've got to appreciate the commitment it takes to be this petty. Imagine chickening out of playing for your new team in the postseason and then sitting on the sidelines as they get swept 4-0 by your former team. You can talk about injuries all you want, but it was clear as day that the Australian was ducking the Sixers assignment and did not want anything to do with the boos that were inevitably going to greet him in Philadelphia. Somehow, what's the most impressive thing about all this is that after having his current employers get knocked out in a brutal fashion by his former team, Simmons posted a story about watching the 76ers get destroyed in the next round by the Boston Celtics. Like I said, no shame whatsoever. The Nets star made sure to include a glass of wine in his story so that fans know just how much he enjoyed watching the Sixers lose, which is not a surprise given how their relationship came to an end in such a destructive manner. And it's hardly the only time the Sixers and Simmons have traded blows. In fact, their problems began very early on, back when Simmons was actually a part of the organization. That defeat to the Atlanta Hawks in the 2021 playoffs was the turning point. Simmons went from being the next LeBron James to being considered a draft bust, and the 76ers went from having one of the most talented rosters in the entire division to losing the cornerstone of their franchise. The fallout was ugly. Simmons went on a strike and refused to play for the franchise, demanding to be traded away from Philadelphia. The comments after the Hawks game had severed the relationship to the point of no return. Both Joel Embiid and Doc Rivers implied how they were in disbelief at what Simmons had done, referring to the play where Simmons had passed up an easy dunk in favor of a pass, ultimately costing his side the game. The former #1 pick criticized the organization for throwing him under the bus for that play, but that's not the only reason for burning bridges. Remember what happened with Paul George during his time with the Indiana Pacers? Before George joined the OKC Thunder back in 2017, he was a crucial member of a decent Pacers team. They weren't equipped with enough talent to go all the way in the NBA, but George had them making a lot of noise in the playoffs. He'd spent a major portion of his career in Indiana, but demanded a trade in 2017 after more playoff disappointment. But after his move to the Thunder was complete, PG-13 went all out against his former employers. George claimed that the franchise was happy being mediocre and didn't care much about winning at all. He explained how the Pacers were never in the right position to construct a contending roster, pointing out that this lack of ambition was the biggest reason why he decided to leave the Pacers. George had the chance to rub it in too, and he took it after draining a game-winning shot against Indiana. It was a brilliant shot, to be fair, and George went on to troll his former team, even though he didn't mean it in a disrespectful way. However, most analysts and fans already disliked the way George had handled his departure, so this wasn't seen as an attempt at lighthearted banter, which is similar to how Kawhi Leonard demanded a trade from San Antonio. This was a massive shock for the NBA world. Think about it. The Spurs have been the place to be for a major part of the 21st century, and this was back when they actually had decent players around Kawhi, along with the greatest NBA coach ever, Greg Popovich. Absolutely no one expected them to mess things up with their best player, but that's exactly what happened. Kawhi's struggles with injuries have been a tough problem for the superstar. He hated how the Spurs handled his injury and immediately demanded to leave the organization. Once Leonard got his wish, the 2014 Finals MVP dropped another Finals MVP performance in 2019, helping the Raptors defeat the Warriors in a thrilling Finals series. Leonard, a man of few words, hinted at how he'd been angry with the way his former franchise dealt with his injury, eventually leading to his exit. Sometimes, though, franchises can do everything right and still experience a big-time fallout with a superstar, like Kevin Durant's move to the Golden State Warriors. KD is one of the most polarizing figures in all of the NBA. As good as he is a player, Durant's move to the Warriors left a massive stain on his legacy. The former MVP had the ability to become the next best thing, but unfortunately, Unfortunately, taking the easy way out isn't something that fans appreciate. So, when Durant decided to ditch the Thunder in favor of the Warriors, they had a massive fallout. I mean, KD's relationship with his former teammate Russell Westbrook remains strained to this day. And the less said about the OKC fans, the better. The thing is, he's got no one else to blame though, because he shot himself in the foot. If it wasn't enough joining the very team that had come from behind to beat the Thunder in 2016, the star took things one step further, calling his decision a business move. No doubt that the move ended up being a major success, but KD still doesn't get the respect he deserves. It's mostly to do with the way that he left the Thunder, and the things he said about his former side. This KD saga is often compared to the way LeBron James left Cleveland for Miami. Now, LeBron didn't make any rude comments about the Cavaliers, but his decision to leave the franchise was seen as disrespectful to the city of Cleveland, Ohio, and the Cavs faithful. LeBron's reasons were valid though. He didn't have a decent supporting cast around him to win a ring with the Cavaliers, and it was the right move to make. But of course, what tilted public opinion against him was that infamous TV segment, The Decision, where LeBron discussed how he was taking his talents to South Beach. Fortunately for the Cleveland fans, LeBron returned after becoming a two-time NBA champion and took the Cavaliers to the finals on multiple occasions, winning a ring in the process. Not every story has a happy ending though, and the one between the Sacramento Kings and DeMarcus Cousins certainly wasn't a fairy tale. Now, Cousins had a fallout with the organization, and in a similar fashion to the Simmons-Sixers saga, Cousins wanted to make a clean break and play for another franchise. Credit to the center for remaining civil after getting the move away from Sacramento, but not before he hinted about how mediocre the franchise was, and how the front office and management disliked Cousins' inability to stay out of trouble. It was never going to work out. DeMarcus's exit was met with mixed reactions. Just like Melo's departure from Denver, the Nuggets fumbled Carmelo Anthony big time. I often look back and wonder what could have been if Anthony had ended up staying with the Nuggets, because the team certainly had potential. But fans in Denver were happy to see the back of Melo, because they thought he wasn't loyal, and it didn't help his image when he made comments against the Nuggets as a franchise, hinting at how he'd wanted to leave the team to find success elsewhere. Yeah, I don't know about you, but that sounds rude. And as rude as that is, what could possibly be worse than what Andre Iguodala did when he was traded to the Grizzlies? Saying disrespectful things about your former team is one thing, but refusing to play for your employers simply because they aren't championship contenders is as disrespectful as it gets. Iguodala clearly thought he had a lot more to offer than to end up playing for an unambitious team like the Grizzlies. And Memphis fans didn't take too kindly to those comments, with the former Finals MVP receiving a lot of backlash for his actions. Both Dylan Brooks and Ja Morant called Andre out too, and he was finally traded to the Heat before the trade deadline in 2020. However, as far as being rude goes, Jimmy Butler tearing the Timberwolves a new one will never get old. Fumbling a talent like Carmelo is one thing, but fumbling a playoff beast like Butler, there can be no excuses. The Timberwolves decided to put their faith in their younger stars, like Karl Anthony Towns, instead of offering a contract to Butler. When Butler criticized his teammates' work ethic and their commitment, he agreed that the likes of Andrew Wiggins and Cat had more talent than him, but because he played the hardest, the team wouldn't win without him. To be fair, he wasn't wrong. So, from Butler's famous rant against the Timberwolves to Simmons' never-ending feud with the 76ers, these were the times when NBA players were rude to their former teams.